Alex Sterling was in a car accident that left him with the mind of a 5-year-old. His fiancée promptly called off their engagement. At the same time, my father's company went bankrupt, and we desperately needed the Sterling family's financial support. That's how I ended up being rushed into this marriage. On our wedding night, to save face, the Sterling family had Alex's younger brother, Daniel, stand in for him during the ceremony. By the time all the formalities were over, it was already past midnight. Daniel, reeking of alcohol, escorted me to the bridal suite at a leisurely pace, leaning against the wall with a smirk that screamed mischief. "Melissa," he drawled, "if my brother cannot satisfy you, you know where to find me." I shot him a frosty glare and turned to go inside. The room was dimly lit, with only a floor lamp casting a warm glow beside the bed. A large figure was huddled under the blanket on the bed, looking oddly comical. Two clear, wide eyes peered at me cautiously. I stood there silently, observing him for a moment. Pale skin, delicate features, and those pure, unguarded eyes. He looked like a harmless little deer. Well, with a good-looking face like that, I guess I didn't suffer too much from this marriage. Perhaps my scrutiny was too intense, because his grip on the blanket tightened. He swallowed nervously. "Please don't eat me." "Who said I was going to eat you?" I frowned. "Daniel said you'd devour me tonight." I walked over to the bed, leaned down, and tousled his hair. His slightly messy locks were unexpectedly soft to the touch. "As long as you behave, I won't eat you. By the way, you probably don't know my name yet. You can call me Melissa." He tilted his head up to look at me. The warm, yellow light from the floor lamp reflected in his eyes, making them look particularly gentle. "Melissa," he said softly, "it's nice to meet you." I patted his head. "Good. Now turn around, I need to change." Obediently, he buried his head under the blanket. I kicked off my heels, slipped out of the tight gown, and pulled out a silk nightdress that barely covered my thighs. The mirror reflected a woman wrapped in flimsy fabric, her curvy figure and sultry features giving off an air of exaggerated allure. This was one of the only wearable options in the wardrobe. The wedding had been arranged in such a rush that my father had handled all the minor details, including these purchases. His instructions had been clear: as long as I bore Alex's child, the Sterling family's vast fortune would eventually be ours. My gaze shifted to the mirror again, and I caught sight of Alex's face in the reflection. His jaw was clenched, and his sharp eyes seemed to be assessing me like a predator. When I turned around, all I saw was his innocent, bewildered expression. "I told you to turn around. It's too stuffy." I couldn't breathe. I stared at him suspiciously. The look I'd just seen was intense, predatory, completely at odds with his current deer-in-headlights demeanor. Alex lowered his head guiltily, fidgeting with his fingers. "Sorry, Melissa." I decided to let it go. The room was dim, and I'd had more than a few drinks tonight. Maybe I was imagining things. After washing up and doing my skincare routine, my head still felt a little foggy. I didn't bother with Alex and just climbed into bed to sleep. No sooner had I settled in than I heard some rustling noises. The other side of the bed dipped slightly, and the blanket shifted. I cracked an eye open and saw Alex still in his white shirt and black trousers. "You're sleeping in that?" I asked, a little annoyed. Looking like a scolded puppy, he nodded. "Yes. Suit yourself." I shut my eyes. Too tired to care. Just as I was about to drift off, he called my name. "Melissa. Melissa." His voice was soft, like he was afraid of waking me. I sighed, my patience wearing thin. "What now?" "It's too hard. It's hurting me." I glanced over at him, wondering what he was going on about, and my face turned red immediately when I realized what he meant. "Oh my God." He was pointing at his belt buckle. "My buckle is too hard, and I can't undo it," he said, sounding downright pitiful. I rubbed my temples, already regretting my life choices, but sat up to help. The room was dark, and I'd never done this for anyone else, so I fumbled around like an idiot, my fingers slipping all over the place without managing to unfasten it. Every now and then, my hand would brush against his skin, warm and solid compared to my cold fingers. "Melissa," he murmured. His voice was husky. The kind of tone that made my heart skip a beat for no reason. "What now?" I snapped, trying to stay focused. He leaned in closer, his face near my neck. "You smell really nice." The warm breath against my skin sent a flush creeping up my face. Embarrassed, I turned on the bedside lamp, flooding the room with light to break the weird tension. Alex blinked at me. "Why's your face red?" "I drank too much," I stammered, fumbling to turn the light back off before diving under the covers. "Go to sleep," I muttered. I slept in and woke up feeling much better. After a quick change, I headed downstairs for breakfast. At the table, Daniel lounged in his chair like he owned the place, a smug grin on his face. He pointed at the food in front of him and said to Alex, "Want some?" "Yes," Alex said, nodding eagerly, his wide eyes fixed on the food. The table was covered in dishes, but he didn't dare take anything. "Bark like a dog, and I'll let you have it," Daniel sneered. Alex froze, looking conflicted. "But Grandpa said, are you gonna do it or not?" Daniel interrupted, leaning forward with a sharp look. Alex flinched, shrinking back like a scared puppy. Finally, he lowered his head and let out a soft bark. Daniel laughed, patting Alex's face like he was an actual dog. "Good boy. Here, eat." Then, out of nowhere, Daniel poured a cup of coffee over Alex's head. Alex sat there, shaking, his lips pressed tight together to keep from crying out. His wide eyes filled with tears, but he didn't move or say a word. That was my breaking point. I stormed down the stairs and shoved Daniel as hard as I could. "Don't you dare!" I shouted. The glass hit the floor and shattered. Alex's pale forehead was already red from the hot coffee. He clung to me, trembling, his voice small and shaky. "Melissa, it hurts," he whimpered. Behind me, Daniel snorted. "Didn't think you'd play the hero." I didn't even look at him. "Yeah, I'll look after him from now on. So do us both a favor and stay the hell away." After Daniel left, Alex's eyes were red, and his large hands clung tightly to the hem of my shirt as I carefully treated his burn. "Does Daniel treat you like this often?" I couldn't help but ask. He nodded silently. "Why don't you tell your dad or your grandpa?" "Dad doesn't care about me, and Grandpa would just get upset." "So your dad knows what Daniel's been doing?" "Yes." I was momentarily speechless. Everyone knew that Alex's father, Scott, had married into the Sterling family. He even took on their last name. A man who climbed the social ladder through his wife wasn't exactly well regarded in business circles. My dad, for one, had insulted Scott countless times. But 3 years ago, Alex's mother passed away, and his aging grandfather could no longer manage the family business. Scott seized the opportunity, taking over the company and bringing his mistress and illegitimate son, Daniel, into the Sterling household. Rumor had it that Scott harbored resentment toward Alex and his mother, likely because of the stigma he'd faced as a live-in son-in-law. Still, Alex was his biological son, how could he be this blatantly biased? "Melissa." Alex tugged lightly on my sleeve, his face earnest. "Please don't tell Grandpa. It'll make him sad." My heart softened. All right. At his age, Alex's grandfather likely wouldn't be able to do much anyway. A month passed, and Alex's burn was healing well. I decided to take him shopping after giving myself a light touch-up. The clothes I brought from home weren't cutting it anymore. My pajamas were barely decent, and my everyday outfits were embarrassingly dowdy. Elegant by day, seductive by night. That was my father's idea of what a smart woman should be. He'd treated me like a product from the start, molding me into the perfect doll, poised and proper, with understated makeup, no hobbies, no job, and absolutely no interactions with men. All I had to do was wait for the right marriage to help him secure his business deals. Unfortunately for him, I'd inherited his stubborn streak. I wasn't about to let anyone dictate my life. I agreed to this marriage solely because the Sterlings were powerful and excellent stepping stone. Besides, I was marrying a man with the mind of a child. He wouldn't get in my way. Perfect, right? What I hadn't expected was how endearing this child would turn out to be. At that moment, Alex was standing by a street vendor, insisting I wear a cheap bunny ear headband. "Melissa, this is cute. Buy it." Helpless against his enthusiasm, I gave in. With a pair of floppy bunny ears perched on my head and Alex's hand in mine, I dragged him off to shop for some real clothes. His wardrobe was filled with nothing but suits, and the few pieces of loungewear he had looked like they belonged in a donation bin. I figured no one had bothered buying him clothes after he got sick. While Alex was trying on outfits, my phone buzzed. It was my dad. I sighed and picked up. "Dad. How's that little idiot?" "He's fine. Very well behaved." "Good. Stay home and keep him happy. The sooner you have a kid, the better. And make sure to visit Alex's grandpa often. Don't forget. Most of the company shares are still in his hands." "I know. And stay out of the Sterling family drama. Keep your mouth shut." I hesitated. Was this Scott's idea? Don't ask. A pair of arms suddenly wrapped around my waist, and a warm, fluffy head nuzzled into the crook of my neck. "Melissa." Flustered, I hurriedly ended the call. "I'll talk to you later." Alex came out of the fitting room wearing a soft, loose hoodie. His long lashes cast shadows over his cheeks, and his doe-like eyes shimmered with an innocent brightness. Sure, he looked great in a suit too, but something about his naive, unguarded gaze always felt a little off paired with formal wear. In this outfit, though, he seemed to shed that awkward childishness, revealing a youthful energy that suited someone his age perfectly. Maybe it was all the scheming I'd grown up watching my father play at, but looking into Alex's clear, guileless eyes left me a bit stunned. "Melissa, does it look good?" He tugged on the hem of my shirt, looking at me expectantly. I snapped out of it. "It looks great. Let's get it." Once we wrapped up our shopping, Alex stood outside a bustling dessert shop, arms weighed down with bags, swallowing hard as he stared through the glass. I sighed. "You want some?" "Yes," he admitted, a bit sheepishly. Of course, he'd picked the shop with the longest line. "Wait here. Don't wander off," I said, stepping into the crowd, heels clicking against the pavement. I wasn't much of a sweets person, and I hated crowds even more. Standing in line, I was already regretting not ordering delivery. "Hey there, beautiful," a voice said from behind me. "Not interested," I replied without turning around. "I'll cover your bill." "Just give me a chance," the man pressed. "Do I look like I need your money?" I shot back, irritation clear in my tone. That seemed to shut him up at least until I felt a sharp shove against my waist. Stumbling forward, a jolt of pain shot through my ankle. What the hell? I looked back to see a beefy man glaring at me, his broad frame taking up the space where I'd just been standing. "Playing hard to get, huh? Think you're better than me?" he snarled. Before I could even process what was happening, his collar was yanked from behind, and he was dragged out of the line. The man barely had time to react before Alex's fist collided with his nose. I froze, stunned. Alex's jaw was tight. His usually gentle features hardened into something cold and unrelenting. One punch after another, he didn't give the man a chance to retaliate. Despite his size, the man turned out to be all bark and no bite. After a brief struggle, he realized he was outmatched and quickly switched to begging for mercy. Enough, Alex, I said, finally finding my voice. He stopped, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. Meanwhile, my ankle throbbed in protest, and I limped over. How much? I asked the man, cutting straight to the point. Mumbling through a bloodied nose, he named a price. It wasn't much, just a few $1,000s. I couldn't be bothered to argue, so I tore out a check and tossed it onto his chest. As I turned back, I felt a warm hand on my ankle. Alex had knelt down, his palm cupping the swollen area as he glanced up at me. Melissa, does it hurt a lot? I'm fine. Get up before you ruin your new clothes, I said, pulling him to his feet and brushing the dust off his hoodie. When I looked up, though, I found his eyes clouded with something unreadable. Before I could say anything, he took my wrist and gently pulled me into his arms. His head tucked against my neck, and his voice was soft but heavy. Melissa, will you always treat me this well? I will, I replied, my voice wavering. Because in the future I'd envisioned for myself, Alex wasn't part of the plan. Liar, he murmured into my shoulder. A strange pang shot through me. Snapping out of the moment, I quickly asked, who taught you to fight like that? My grandpa. He said if someone bullies me, I have to fight back. Then why don't you fight back when Daniel bullies you? Because he's my brother, Alex said simply, his gaze dropping. A touch of sorrow in his expression that made my chest ache. By the time we got home, the sky had turned dark. A sleek Maybach was parked outside the villa. I froze, my entire body tensing up. Earlier, the man Alex had fought wasn't tall, and while he hadn't landed many hits, he'd stubbornly managed to leave several scratches across Alex's jaw and neck. Now, with Alex carrying me on his back, both hands loaded with luxury shopping bags, his face and neck streaked with red, we looked bad. It painted a picture, me as some awful woman who abused Alex, spent his money on designer goods, and refused to even walk on my own, forcing him to serve as my pack mule. The car door opened, and a slender figure stepped out. She was petite, with porcelain skin and glossy black hair cascading down her shoulders. Her beautiful eyes shimmered with an emotion she couldn't quite voice, though they were locked firmly on Alex. Rebecca. This must be her Alex's first love. Back when they were engaged, she was the envy of every socialite, hailed as the girl who would marry the sterling heir. But then, Alex's car accident left him with the mind of a child. Rebecca's family vehemently opposed the union, and despite her reluctance, she eventually gave in and called off the engagement. The Sterling family, too proud to cancel the wedding entirely, scrambled to find a replacement. That's where I came in Rebecca's stand-in. The ceremony went on as planned. If Alex's accident had never happened, Rebecca would have been the bride. Hello. Rebecca greeted me softly, her gaze darting to Alex with visible concern. Alex, are you all right? Hi, I replied, feeling an odd sense of discomfort. I patted Alex's shoulder. Put me down. I can walk on my own. I was just a placeholder, I had no intention of getting involved in their lingering drama. No, Alex said stubbornly, adjusting his grip and heading toward the house. Melissa's hurt. I don't have time to play with you right now. Oh my gosh, Melissa, are you injured? Rebecca's voice rose with alarm. Yes, I twisted my ankle, I said, forcing a polite smile. Why don't you come in for a bit? Rebecca didn't hesitate, following us inside. Sitting in the living room, I cradled a cup of tea, watching the scene unfold. Alex had taken a seat across from me, only for Rebecca to quickly claim the spot next to him, clinging to his left side with a look of genuine concern. Alex, what happened to your neck? She asked softly. Fighting bad guys, Alex answered seriously. Bad guys? Rebecca turned to me, puzzled. I got into a little dispute with someone earlier, I explained, keeping my tone neutral. Rebecca nodded, seemingly satisfied, and reached out to touch Alex's jaw. Does it hurt? She asked gently. Alex leaned back, dodging her hand, and crouched down in front of me instead. No pain. Melissa hurts more. Rebecca's smile faltered as she withdrew her hand. Melissa, it seems Alex is very fond of you. Yes. He's very sweet. I reached out to tousle his hair affectionately. Have you taken him for a follow-up at the hospital recently? Rebecca asked. Yesterday, I replied. The doctor said there's still residual blood clots in his brain. Recovery seems unlikely. I see, Rebecca murmured, her expression unreadable. She hesitated before asking, has Uncle Scott or Grandpa been by to see him? No, you're the first to visit him, I said simply. Rebecca gave a small nod, standing up and grabbing her bag. Well, take good care of him. I won't disturb you anymore. Alex helped me to my feet and escorted Rebecca to the door. We stood in silence as her car disappeared down the driveway. I couldn't help but wonder, Rebecca's visit felt calculated, as though she were probing for something, perhaps Alex's chances of recovery. As for Alex, I turned to look at him. His expression had shifted, the usual simplicity in his eyes replaced by a cold, distant look. It was a stark contrast to the boyish charm he usually displayed. Alex? I called out. He turned his head, his gaze softening as he looked at me. Whatever coldness had been there was gone in an instant. Without a word, he scooped me up in his arms. Melissa, I'll take you to rest, he said gently. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my thoughts spinning. Though we'd only spent a month together, my instincts told me Alex wasn't as simple-minded as he appeared. There were moments fleeting, but undeniable, when I caught glimpses of something sharper, more calculating in his demeanor. And the strangest part? The moment he noticed me looking, that serious expression would vanish, replaced by his usual innocence. Could it be that Alex was just playing dumb to everyone? This suspicion was hard to confirm, and honestly, I didn't have the energy to investigate. For now, my priority was work. Though my father had always kept a tight grip on my life, leaving me no room to pursue a career, I had secretly saved up and invested in a company. That company was now thriving, finally giving me the chance to break free and focus on building something of my own. In fact, that was one of the reasons I'd agreed to marry Alex. He was easy to manage and wouldn't interfere with my plans. Or so I thought. On my very first day back at work, I realized just how wrong I'd been. Alex called me 10 times an hour, his voice filled with pitiful desperation as he asked, Melissa, do you not want me anymore? Even my business partner, Carl, couldn't take it. He glanced at me and suggested, Melissa, maybe just bring him to work with you? Not a chance, I snapped, shutting off my phone. In the end, I blocked Alex's number, finally restoring some peace to my day. Carl was a college friend with a sharp business mind but a modest upbringing. After graduation, I'd provided the seed funding for him to launch our company, and he hadn't let me down. Everything was running smoothly under his leadership. Eager to prove myself on my first official day, I threw myself into work with Carl. We passionately discussed our vision for the company's future, talking well into the night. When I returned home, it was past 10, and the night was deep. In the faint glow of the villa's outdoor lights, I saw Alex sitting on a bench near the front door, wearing only a thin dress shirt and suit jacket. Parking the car, I stepped out on my heels and approached him. What are you doing out here? He kept his head down, ignoring me. I sighed, reaching out to ruffle his hair. Are you upset? Yes, he muttered. Why? I asked, sitting beside him. I went to work. I can't stay with you all the time. Alex finally lifted his head, his expression solemn as he looked at me. Melissa, you don't need to work. I have money. I can take care of you. The night air was chilly, and I shivered slightly, managing a smile. Your money isn't enough. Alex leaned closer, wrapping his arms around me and pulling me into his warmth. The heat of his body chased away the cold. I have lots and lots of money. Why isn't it enough? Because I want to buy freedom. Resting my head against his chest, I gazed at the faint stars in the distance. Since I was a child, I was told my only value was to marry well. My entire life has been meticulously planned out for me. But I don't want that. I want to prove that I can stand on my own and one day, maybe even surpass him. Alex didn't respond immediately. Instead, I felt the gentle warmth of his lips against my cheek. Startled, I turned to face him, meeting his starry, mesmerizing eyes. I understand, he said softly. Do whatever you need to. I'll support you. Then you can't interrupt my work anymore, I warned. Alex thought it over seriously before nodding. I'll try. Then, he stood and offered me his hand. Let's go inside. It's too cold out here. All right. Following behind him, my gaze drifted to the ground and I noticed a few scattered cigarette butts. In this villa, it was just me, Alex, and a housekeeper. Curious, I casually asked her during dinner if anyone had visited that afternoon. She said no. The housekeeper didn't smoke. That left only one possibility. The cigarettes were Alex's. The more I observed, the more I felt like he was playing everyone for fools. But I had no proof. Even if I asked him, I knew he'd never admit it. I planned to find a way to test him, but before I could find the right opportunity, work took over all my time. A German company was planning to enter the domestic market, and the investment was massive. It was a golden opportunity for us. But there were many others eyeing the same prize, so I had no choice but to dedicate myself to it, working day and night to secure the deal. The longer I worked overtime, the more frustrated Alex became. Every evening, right as I was about to finish work, he would call me. Melissa, you should come home. I would rub my forehead in frustration and reply, I still have work to do, don't wait for me. You go ahead and sleep. Every time this happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were a real married couple or perhaps lovers. Carl, who was sitting nearby, couldn't help but tease me. He called again, huh? I just nodded. I don't want to sleep. I'm coming to see you. Alex's voice came through the phone. What do you need to come for? I'm working. I'll be scared alone at home. It's already dark outside. I thought about it for a moment. The housekeeper had already gone home. If Alex was really as clueless as he seemed, it might be dangerous to leave him alone. All right, put on your coat and wait at home. I'll have my assistant come pick you up. Okay. Alex hung up, and Carl grabbed the car keys. I'll go get him, he said. I raised an eyebrow. So eager? Carl grinned. When the company first started, I saw your husband at a party, surrounded by people. I couldn't even say a word to him. Now, I finally get to meet this domineering CEO in real life. I'm not going to waste this chance. I laughed. He's hardly a CEO anymore, not even to mention being domineering. He's just a child now. Go ahead, I'll send you the address. An hour later, Carl returned, and Alex followed him in, dressed in a tracksuit, with a black wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. He walked over, his long legs closing the distance quickly. Without a word, he wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin against my shoulder and rubbing it softly. Melissa, I missed you. Carl, clearly uncomfortable, quickly averted his gaze. You two go ahead and talk, I'll be back in a bit. I was taken aback by his sudden show of affection, feeling my cheeks flush. I gently pushed him away. Be good, we're in the office, you need to keep it together. There's no one here, Alex protested. Leaning in again. His words caught me off guard. At first, I'd just seen him as a child, and his affection didn't seem strange. But ever since that night he kissed my cheek and the cigarette butts appeared, I couldn't quite tell whether his affection was innocent or laced with something more. And now, with his casual remark, there's no one here. It almost felt like he saw this closeness as something more than just affection. It felt like he was defining it as romantic. Could a 5 or 6-year-old truly understand that kind of concept? Melissa, are you mad at me? Alex kissed my cheek again. Okay, I'll sit over there if it makes you feel better. I need to go to a meeting. You can play some games over there while I'm gone, alright? I guided him to sit on the side and stepped out to attend the meeting. As soon as I left the room, Carl leaned in. So, is he really as clueless as he seems? What do you mean? I asked, puzzled. When I picked him up, he just nodded at me. He didn't say a word the entire time, completely normal. He was the same as when I saw him at that party. I couldn't help but glance back at Alex. The fluorescent office lights reflected off him, highlighting the sharp angles of his face beneath the brim of his hat. His long, pale hand occasionally tapped at his phone screen. He looked completely normal. He just doesn't like talking, I shrugged, offering a vague explanation and nudging Carl away. The German company's investment project was up for bidding, and our competitor was the Sterling family. I couldn't afford to get involved directly, so I sent Carl in my place. The strength gap between us was huge, and honestly, I didn't have much hope. But to my surprise, we won the bid. The person representing the Sterling family was Daniel. According to Carl, Daniel was in a terrible mood that day, and it seemed like our company's road ahead wasn't going to be smooth. I thought about it for a moment. Winning this project was monumental for our company. Handing it over was out of the question. Daniel was a fool, and if Alex was pretending to be clueless, then Daniel likely had his own mess to deal with, making him no threat at all. So, I decided not to worry about Daniel and instead find a way to test Alex. After thinking for a while, I came up with the most foolproof plan: pretend to be drunk. Coincidentally, to celebrate our successful bid, Carl organized a company party. And I decided to attend. All night, I ignored Alex's calls. As the party was winding down, I deliberately spilled some alcohol on myself, smelling like booze. In the early morning, after everyone had left, I finally answered his call. Alex's voice was full of concern. Melissa, I'm scared of the dark. I can't sleep. Where are you? I looked around, under the streetlight. There was a long silence on the other end. Then his voice grew calm. Are you drunk? I slurred, no, I can still drink. Stay there, don't move. I'll come get you. I hung up the phone, silently impressed by how quickly he'd changed his tone. He really was playing the fool. He was a natural at acting. He'd make a great movie star. In less than 20 minutes, a black Maserati sped toward me and came to a smooth stop. Alex got out of the driver's seat and walked quickly toward me. Feeling bad? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. Without hesitation, Alex picked me up and placed me in the passenger seat, buckling me in before leaning against the car frame and staring at me for a moment. You still didn't drink enough. Drink more next time and you won't feel bad. What? I frowned at him. Normally. He acted like a well-behaved puppy, but now he was being all sarcastic. Alex, frustrated, forced a smile, pinching my chin. You know exactly what I mean. For some reason, my face reddened even more. Alex climbed back into the driver's seat, expertly starting the car. I sat next to him, wondering whether I should expose his act. If Alex was faking, it had nothing to do with me. As long as I confirmed that he was pretending, I didn't need to worry about Daniel. Alex would take care of him. But if Alex was fine all the time, would he eventually decide to divorce me and go back to his first love, Rebecca? Then why was he so affectionate with me, kissing and hugging me? What a jerk. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, and I didn't even realize we'd already reached home. When Alex opened the car door and picked me up, I snapped back to reality and quickly wrapped my arms around his neck. Alex glanced down at me. Hold on tight. Don't want you to fall. I was still angry, so when he said that, I immediately let go. Alex stopped walking, lowered his gaze at me. Hold on. I'm not going to, I countered, facing him defiantly. Fine. He continued carrying me to the bedroom, bracing himself against the bed and looking down at me. Now, are you going to hold me? I mumbled softly, you let me down already, why should I still hold you? This is a place you can hold me too. What's wrong with holding your husband? Why is it always me initiating it? Now that I thought about it, he had always been the one to initiate the hugs since we got married. But today, he was taking advantage of me being drunk to act like this and take his frustration out on me. I'm not holding you. I turned my head away. Why don't you let Rebecca hold you? I immediately regretted what I had said. I must have really drunk too much to have let those words slip. Alex chuckled lightly. She's only been here once, and you're already jealous? I'm not jealous. I looked at him, deciding to lay everything on the line. Alex, you've actually recovered, haven't you? You've been pretending all along, right? Alex remained calm and collected. Yes. You admit it so readily. Aren't you worried that I'll ruin your reputation? I'm not worried. We stared at each other in silence for a long while. Finally, I spoke softly, then, once you've finished your business and my company is doing better, we can divorce, right? Alex's face darkened as he leaned closer. His voice low. We've only been married for half a year, and you're already planning a divorce? No, but don't you want a divorce? No. His gaze dropped to my lips, his Adam's apple moving as he spoke. We've been married for 6 months. It wouldn't hurt to kiss, right? Before I could respond, his lips were on mine. The tenderness mixed with alcohol, slowly overpowering my senses. After a long while, Alex pulled away. His warm breath tickling my ear. I never thought about divorcing you. And you better not either. In the days that followed, Alex stopped pretending to be clueless around me. The atmosphere between us grew increasingly subtle. Because I had no experience with relationships, I found myself blushing at the smallest things. Once Alex noticed, he seemed to take great pleasure in it. For example, he insisted on holding me while we slept. Even if I pushed him away, I would always wake up in his arms the next morning. When I needed to change clothes and asked him to leave, he would quietly wrap his arms around me from behind. Before, you just needed me to turn my head, but now you want me to leave? At night, he used to say goodnight, but now he would say, good night, baby. I had to admit that, though I didn't know exactly when. I was slowly falling for him. But Rebecca remained the thorn between us. Even though Alex and I had no past together, his love story with Rebecca had been all over the news. It was one of those CEO falls for me tales that everyone couldn't stop talking about. I'd heard of it too. Rebecca was originally a low-key illegitimate child, but during high school, she crossed paths with Alex. He was moved by her purity and kindness. And they developed a mutual affection. When Alex went abroad for university, Scott brought Daniel into the Sterling family and formally gave him the title of the second young master of the Sterling family. It's said that Daniel also pursued Rebecca for a while, though whether he truly liked her or was just trying to compete with Alex is unknown. Rebecca remained unmoved, and after taking a year off from school, she went abroad to confess to Alex. She stayed with him for a year, and when their families decided to get them engaged, Rebecca happily returned to hometown. Rebecca's engagement ring was incredibly luxurious. After she posted about it on social media, it even made the trending topics for a while. Countless people were in awe, realizing that the devoted CEO did really exist. Rebecca had once loved Alex so passionately and openly. Their relationship had lasted from high school all the way through college. As for me and Alex, we hadn't had any breakups or dramatic pursuits. Ours seemed much more understated. I couldn't stop thinking once everyone realizes that Alex has fully recovered, and Rebecca's parents stop opposing, when faced with her tears, Will Alex really not reconsider? By the time I found the answer, 6 months had passed. In those 6 months, Alex continued to maintain his fool persona to the outside world. No one bothered him, and no one cared. The company's growth was steadily improving. Soon after that bidding, Daniel was in a car accident. I saw it on the local news. Daniel was driving drunk, causing a fatal accident and injuring 2 others. There was an official clarification shortly after, stating that Daniel had been in the passenger seat, and it was his friend who had been driving drunk. The driver was arrested. After that incident, Daniel stayed quiet for half a year. When news of him came up again, it was on the headlines. Daniel and Rebecca were engaged, and their wedding was in a month. I walked into the room to find Alex staring at their picture on his computer screen. I rubbed his head and asked, "What's wrong? Feeling bad?" Alex pulled me into his lap. "What nonsense are you talking about?" I casually scrolled through his computer screen. "Do you think Daniel will invite us to the wedding?" "Of course. He'd love to rub it in and get under my skin." "Is that so?" I asked absent-mindedly. "Then what should we prepare as a gift?" "No need to worry. I've already taken care of it." "Alright, then I'll go to sleep. You can keep looking at it." Alex kissed my forehead. "Okay, good night, baby." I quietly walked out of the room, feeling a pang in my heart that spread like wildfire. I didn't want to be anyone's second choice, nor did I want to be a replacement. Even though I didn't show it much, I still believed I deserved someone who truly cared for me. But could Alex give me that? In the following month, I kept my distance from Alex. He seemed very busy, often staying in his study late into the night, too preoccupied to notice my subtle change in attitude. As the wedding date approached, I received a call from Daniel. "Melissa, did you get the invitation?" "I did." "That's good. Don't forget to bring Alex. His grandfather still wants to see him." I couldn't help but laugh. Alex couldn't even show up to his own wedding, but now Daniel's father was making it a requirement that everyone be there. No wonder Alex had to pretend to be a fool, with how completely biased Scott was. "Baby, time to wake up." In the early morning, I was awakened by the sound of Alex's husky voice and soft kisses on my face. I turned my head to avoid his kisses, groggily muttering, "This is the first time I've seen you wake up so early. My dear little brother is getting married. I can't sleep in. I have to wake up early and give him a big gift." I almost forgot today was Daniel and Rebecca's wedding day. "Alright. I'm getting up now." I pushed away my unhappiness and sat up. Alex gently tugged at my arm, pulling me into his chest. "What's wrong? Are you upset, Melissa?" I didn't answer. Realizing I'd been upset for a month and he hadn't noticed seemed a little late. "I've been busy preparing the gifts, so I haven't had time. After today, I'll make it up to you. Is that okay?" Okay." I answered without thinking, not wanting to argue about it this early in the morning. Alex seemed to realize I was brushing him off. He held me tighter, showering me with kisses and sweet words like Melly and baby over and over until my mood lightened a bit. "I'm going to change. Your suit is in the closet." I opened the closet and saw the exclusive, custom-made gown from a high-end luxury brand. Although my family wasn't poor before, this kind of luxury gown was truly something I couldn't afford. I obediently changed into the dress and applied a delicate makeup look. Once everything was ready, I leisurely made my way downstairs. As soon as I looked up, I saw Alex leaning against the foyer, arms crossed, waiting for me. He wore a brand new black tailored suit, gold-rimmed glasses, and his skin had become exceptionally fair from not going out for a while. This was the first time I'd seen Alex dressed up so seriously. Even though I had met a lot of celebrities, this was the first time I realized someone could be so handsome, as if he stepped out of a dream and into the real world. But then, I wondered, was he dressing up so carefully because he wanted to give Daniel a big gift, or was it for Rebecca? Alex stood there, staring at me in a daze for a long time. Our eyes met, and a mix of excitement and bitterness tangled in my chest. I couldn't even tell what I was feeling. I held the hem of my dress, and, as I descended the stairs, I bumped straight into Alex's embrace. He lightly kissed my forehead and gently said, "Melissa, you look so beautiful today." I blushed, and in the distant full-length mirror, our intertwined reflection showed a black suit and a white gown, complementing each other perfectly. When we arrived at the wedding venue, everyone had already taken their seats. Alex confidently held my hand as we entered. Countless gazes turned to us, and the hum of whispered conversations filled the air. Many people were eager to approach and greet us. But Alex didn't even glance at anyone, holding my hand as we made our way toward his grandfather. His grandfather looked frail, hunched over and leaning on a cane, quietly sitting at the center of the crowd. If it weren't for the expensive cane, I wouldn't have thought that this seemingly ordinary old man was the founder of the Sterling Group. "This is Grandpa, Melissa," Alex said as he guided me to sit beside his grandfather, not even sparing a glance for Scott, who was nearby. Grandpa didn't seem the least bit surprised by Alex's sudden recovery. He simply looked at me and nodded, saying, "Melissa, you're just as lovely as Alex said." "Thank you for the compliment, Grandpa," I smiled and responded, unable to stop glancing at Scott. Scott's face was pale with anger. "Have you really recovered, or have you just forgotten everything again? You can't even greet your own father properly. How rude." Before Alex could reply, the music started. Rebecca appeared, walking down the aisle in a pure white wedding gown, smiling. As she passed in front of us, she paused for a moment. Her gaze lingered on Alex, and she gave him that look like she wanted to say something, but couldn't. I didn't dare look at Alex. I was afraid if I saw them gazing at each other deeply, I wouldn't be able to stop myself from flipping the table. Beneath the table, a large hand suddenly grasped mine, gently squeezing. Alex leaned in close, whispering in my ear, "Melissa, I've been thinking about this for a long time. Let's have our own wedding, okay?" My heart, which had been hanging in the air, was gently wrapped in those words and slowly settled back down to the ground. I squeezed his hand in return. "Okay." Up on the stage, Daniel had already entered. But Rebecca's eyes kept drifting to Alex. She must have noticed his recovery and couldn't sit still. Just as they were about to exchange rings, a group of police officers suddenly barged in, marching up to Daniel and handcuffing him without saying a word. The wedding venue immediately descended into chaos. The sounds of heated arguments, angry shouts, and the flashing of camera lights filled the air. Alex and his grandfather remained unfazed, even exchanging a few words now and then, coolly watching the drama unfold. I couldn't help but lean in and whisper to Alex, "Is this the big gift you were talking about for Daniel?" "Yeah, this is just the beginning. The bigger surprise is yet to come." Grandpa, noticing us whispering, chuckled quietly. "All right, Alex, come see me tomorrow. I'm not sticking around for this spectacle any longer. I'll take my leave now." After Grandpa left, Alex raised an eyebrow. "Melissa, are you tired of watching? Should we head home now? You said there was a bigger gift, remember?" Alex couldn't help but laugh. He put his arm around my shoulders and started leading me out. "You really love watching drama, huh? The bigger surprise isn't here, it's at home." "Alex." Rebecca's voice came from behind us. Turning around, I saw her approaching, her eyes red and holding up her wedding gown. "Alex, now that you've regained your memories, why didn't you come find me? If I had known you were back to normal, I wouldn't have married Daniel, even if my family forced me to. Why would I find you? Who you marry has nothing to do with me. I'm already married." Rebecca frowned and shot a glance at me. "But you married her when you were out of your mind. That's not a real marriage, is it?" Alex shrugged. "But Melissa and I are legally married now. Sorry. Tears finally spilled from Rebecca's eyes. Are you mad because I married Daniel? But you know what my family is like. They didn't give me a choice. A few years ago, I dropped out of school and flew out to your city alone, just for you. You know, from the start, I was always choosing you. Rebecca, do you think I'm stupid? When Daniel first pursued you, you never rejected him. Do you know how many private photos of you two he sent me? Did you really think he'd keep your secrets? As for you flying to my city, that was your parents' idea, because they were sure I could inherit the family business. What choosing me are you talking about? All along, you've been choosing money. Rebecca stood there in shock. Alex glanced at me, still watching the scene, and took my hand as we walked out. I couldn't resist continuing to dig for gossip. So, Rebecca betrayed you after you went abroad? You got cheated on? Alex gave me a helpless look. What do you think? And you stayed with her for a whole year? I was still in school. If she wanted to stay with me, what could I do? And then you got engaged to her? I wanted to get a rise out of Daniel. I can't believe I used to think you were the sweet, naive little fool. When it comes to you, I've always been that way. I was left speechless. The next day, Alex held me as we sat at his desk, watching the news. The headline that appeared on the screen read, Sterling Group bankrupt and Daniel arrested. Someone had provided evidence to the police that Daniel was the one responsible for the recent DUI incident. Scott had paid someone to take the fall for him. And Sterling Group had collapsed overnight. It turned out Scott had been harboring grudges about being forced into the marriage, holding resentment against Alex and his mother, as well as Alex's grandfather. The death of Alex's mother was also linked to Scott. After Alex returned to the country, Daniel had orchestrated a car accident. Alex had played along, pretending to be clueless on the surface, while secretly setting his plan into motion, gradually turning Sterling Group into a crumbling shell. Everything was going according to plan except for me. I had become an unexpected variable. Alex made another public appearance. This time as the CEO of a foreign enterprise. At a business meeting, Alex appeared in a sharp suit. That was when I learned that the German company I had initially partnered with was actually being managed by Alex. On the way home, I sighed. I thought that my first deal was won by my ability, but it turns out it was my looks that got me the job. Well, should I pull the investment then? No, beauty is part of my ability. Alex smiled and shot me a playful glance. As the traffic light turned red, he leaned in to kiss me. I'm part of your ability too. It wasn't until the car behind us honked impatiently that Alex pulled away. My phone had been vibrating nonstop. It was my dad calling. I thought for a moment before hanging up. Aren't you going to answer? I already know what he'll say. He'll tell me to behave and get pregnant as soon as possible. Alex glanced at me. Pregnancy sounds like a good idea. No way. I rejected immediately. I want to focus on running the company. I'm not thinking about having kids right now. Alex, would you mind? I don't mind. Alex parked the car and looked at me seriously. Whatever you want to do, I'll support you unconditionally. If your dad has an issue with it, you can blame it all on me. Worst case, just say I can't have kids. I couldn't help but scan him up and down. You wouldn't actually. Without saying another word, Alex picked me up and carried me inside. Maybe we need to try it out to find out. I've been wanting to for a while. Sterling Group went bankrupt, Daniel was imprisoned, and Scott was penniless and facing lawsuits. Scott came to see Alex a few times, but he was always turned away. Later, Scott gave up on pride and showed up at my company. Scott, now down on his luck, was wearing a suit that was torn in several places, his beard unkempt. The first thing he said when he saw me was, I want to see Alex. He doesn't want to see you. Melissa, don't forget, if it weren't for me, how could you have married Alex? You should be grateful for the good life you have now, thanks to me. Should I be grateful to you? Alex walked up behind him. This might be the only decent thing you've ever done. You ungrateful brat, he's your brother, you were bound by blood. Scott became agitated but was quickly restrained by a few security guards. I don't have a brother, and I don't have a father. Alex stood in front of me and tossed a file at Scott. Not sending you to prison is my final act of mercy. You really think your shady deals are well hidden? Scott picked up the file from the floor and looked through it. His face turned pale. If there's a next time, these files will be on the front page of every major news outlet. I'm not joking. Scott slunk away, disappearing completely from our lives. After everything returned to normal, Alex and I had a belated wedding ceremony. He held my hand as the officiant finished reading the vows. And we exchanged rings. The ring Alex had prepared for me was exquisite and luxurious, but I couldn't help feeling a little jealous. Looks like the ring you gave to Rebecca was bigger. Alex looked confused. What ring did I give her? Don't pretend. You can still find pictures from your engagement in the news. Really? Let me see. Alex searched on his phone. This is the one I bought. But it was for a friend's wedding. They asked me to help pick the wedding band, so I chose the most expensive one as a gift for them. Did Rebecca not know this was a gift for your friend's wedding? She knew. Besides, this one on your finger is way more expensive than the one in the photo. It may look the same size, but I had it re-engraved later. If you don't like it, I can buy you another one. No need, I like this one. Well, since you like it. Does that mean I can get some reward? Alex leaned in to kiss me. Suddenly, I heard my dad cough from behind, and it startled me. Alex wasn't even fazed. Hi. Can I have a word with Melissa alone? Reluctantly, I walked over, knowing my dad was probably aware of the growing reputation of my company. Sure enough, before I even reached the door, my dad started questioning me. Who gave you permission to? Melissa is an adult. She doesn't need anyone's permission to do what she does. If this is about the company, I respect her choices, and as her father, I believe you want her to be happy too, Alex interjected, leaving my dad speechless. In the end, my dad's lecture never took place, and he left in disappointment. After that, Alex kept pestering me, asking when I had started to like him. I thought back to countless moments, Alex's shy eyes the first time we met, his body trembling as he held me tight, his head buried in my shoulder, and the secret kiss he gave me under a sky full of stars. After a while, I answered him, I think it was probably when we first met. But with every second spent together after that, I just fell deeper and deeper. Months passed, and life with Alex settled into a comforting rhythm. The wedding had been a beautiful turning point, and while we both worked hard, Alex running his business empire and me managing my growing company, there was always time for each other. We had our share of playful banter and quiet moments, and it felt like we were building a life that was uniquely ours. One evening, after a long day, Alex pulled me to the balcony. The city lights twinkled below, and the air was cool with a hint of early autumn. He gazed at me, his eyes soft but intent. Melissa, he began, his voice more serious than usual, there's something I've been meaning to ask. I turned toward him, curiosity piqued. What is it? Alex hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. What do you want for our future? What's the next step for us? I was quiet for a beat, letting the question sink in. The future had always felt like something far off, something uncertain. But with Alex, everything seemed possible. I think. I took his hand, squeezing it gently. I want us to continue building this, together. You, me, our lives, our family, everything we've been through only makes me want to hold on to this even more. I don't need grand gestures or promises. I just want the real, honest moments. The simple ones. Like this. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips. You know, I think I want that too. But if you're okay with it, I want to make one promise: no matter what comes our way, we'll face it together. I nodded, my heart swelling with affection for him. Together. He leaned down to kiss me, the soft press of his lips against mine reaffirming the bond we shared. And as the days turned into months, and the months into years, we built that life. A life full of love, laughter, and shared dreams. We didn't need the perfect ending, because every day with Alex felt like the beginning of something beautiful. And in the end, that was enough. The end.